So most of you guys would know now that Hong Kong has just approved the Bitcoin spot ETF, indicating that China has made yet another Bitcoin backflip. And the last time China said something positive about Bitcoin, way back in 2019, the price of Bitcoin pumped by 40% in one day, which would look like Bitcoin teleporting to $90,000 today. But that is not what we're going to be talking about today. I think this ETF approval is far more consequential because I think that this could begin the demonetization of the world's largest asset class, and that is the Chinese real estate market. And I think that is the story that everybody is missing. Okay, we can see here that the most expensive property market in the entire world is Hong Kong's property market. You need 18.8x the average person's salary to buy the average size home. Okay, I ran the numbers just before I jumped on this live stream. The average salary in Hong Kong is around 56,000 US dollars. And that means the average size home is actually over 1 million US dollars. So I think that just maybe that the approval of these Bitcoin spot ETFs in Hong Kong could demonetize the world's largest asset class. We're going to talk about all of that in a moment, but let's first break down the news for anyone who might have missed what happened on Twitter this morning. Most people have been talking about it, so we're not going to beat this story to death because you guys have probably already seen it. Hong Kong approves first Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, okay? Now, this is very consequential because the fact that China and Hong Kong are essentially one nation, okay? They are essentially what does China called Hong Kong? One party, one nation, so to say. So this is why it is such a big deal for Hong Kong to actually have their Bitcoin spot ETF approved. Okay, so here's another article talking about this in a little bit more detail. Hong Kong gives initial approval to first Bitcoin and Ethereum spot ETFs. Okay, so massive, it's very big, and this is why it's big. Here's the relationship. So since 1997, Hong Kong has been a part of China under the one country, two systems approach. Okay, so within Hong Kong society, there are different views of this arrangement. So obviously the people in Hong Kong have actually voted in elections democratically over the years, signaling that, they would actually prefer to be independent. We're not going to get into the politics of today's video. I just want to cover the news and how it relates to Bitcoin. Okay, so I think that this cycle is different because we have a different size of entities getting into the Bitcoin space. So we have America and China getting into this Bitcoin spot ETF race. And if we were to actually compare the size of these markets, we can see that they are astronomically larger than all of these other markets around the world that approved the Bitcoin spot ETF in 2021. Okay, so before we have a look at this chart, let's kind of explain what I'm talking about. Okay, so in 2021, we saw the Canadian Bitcoin spot ETFs launched. Okay, so this was massive, this was big, but again, Canada is only a very small country. If we were to have a look at the wealth control by Canada on this chart here, we can see that they only have about $8.5 trillion of total wealth in the country of Canada. Okay, so very small. But who else had Bitcoin spot ETFs approved in 2021? Brazil. And one of my ex-home countries, Australia, has also approved Bitcoin spot ETFs in 2021. Okay, so these were kind of the smaller countries, so to say, approving Bitcoin spot ETFs in 2021. Now on this chart, we actually have some bigger countries approving Bitcoin spot ETFs. So most people would know that the US Bitcoin spot ETFs exceeded everybody's expectations to the upside. Okay, we've had over $10 billion worth of net inflows into these spot ETFs in 3 months. It's broken all sorts of records. Not many people were, accurately bullish enough on the approval of these Bitcoin spot ETFs. And as we can see, America holds around $105 trillion worth of wealth in their country, which is enormous. Okay, it is absolutely massive. And now look at this country with the second most amount of wealth in the country has just approved, well, Hong Kong has approved a Bitcoin spot ETF. So to be technically correct, China hasn't necessarily approved a Bitcoin spot ETF. But as we're about to show you in a second, Hong Kong and Beijing is actually a fan of what Hong Kong is doing. Okay, so Beijing is on board with Hong Kong's ambitions to be a quote unquote crypto hub. Just for me to actually show you guys the headline, so to say, of what that is, because some people might have missed it. We have talked about this a lot on the channel, but if you missed it, I think in 2022, 2023, Hong Kong announced that they wanted to become the world's crypto hub. And as you can see, this news article, Beijing quietly backing Hong Kong's crypto plans. Okay, so again, they're using words, they're saying crypto, but as you can see, this was in 2023. Now, the reason that Beijing was supposedly supporting Hong Kong in their ambitions was because that there were many Beijing officials spotted at these meetings in Hong Kong. Okay, these were crypto, quote unquote, meetings in Hong Kong, and Beijing officials were being spotted at them. Okay, so pretty big thing, but these have been rumors circulating for a long time now. Okay, you can see from another Kong's crypto hub and seal of approval. So effectively, this is going to give the Chinese citizen a way to get their wealth out of the country. Okay, so this is massive because China holds a lot of wealth. Okay, when we actually have a look at the size of the property market in China, we're going to see why this is such an important thing. So we can see here that houses account for 70% of Chinese households' assets. Okay, this is absolutely massive. 70% of the total wealth in China is tied up in the real estate market. Again, China has $63 trillion of wealth. Massive, absolutely huge. And a large line share of that is tied up in real estate. Now, the people want to get their money out of real estate because of what's been happening recently in the Chinese property market. So this here is a little bit of a screenshot from a website. It's very difficult to get charts and data coming out of China because they're a little bit secretive with their economic data. But as you can see from this screenshot, the property sector in China, which holds 70% of Chinese citizens' wealth, is falling. Existing home prices slid 9% month over month in big cities in July 2023. Okay, now for those who don't know, China's real estate market is $90 trillion in size. So for it to slide by 9% in 1 month, that represents a $9 trillion wipeout in wealth in 1 month. Okay, so China has wanted to get their capital out of the country for a long time. They've got very bad capital controls in China. So for a long time, Chinese citizens thought, okay, the next best thing I can do is store all my wealth in property. But now the property market is absolutely crumbling. So they're looking for other ways to get their wealth out of the country. This is where Hong Kong's Bitcoin spot ETF slides into the equation, so to say. Because not only is it very interesting timing that we have this Hong Kong Bitcoin spot ETF, but it is actually, it's a better ETF than the US Bitcoin spot ETFs. It is allowing in-kind redemptions. Okay, so very different to the US, spot ETFs where they don't allow in-kind redemptions. They only allow you to get cash back when you redeem or sell that ETF. Okay, so again, very different. Not only has the Hong Kong Bitcoin spot ETF come 2 months after the US spot ETFs, but it is actually better. Okay, so it kind of looks like maybe we're seeing a little bit of FOMO come in right now. Okay, so this is another chart showing just how reliant Chinese GDP is on real estate, 77%. Okay, so it's again huge, and Chinese home buyers are getting, they're not happy. They're not satisfied with what's happening in the country as their largest property developers are going under. Okay, so that's a little bit about the property market in China. And that's a story that I don't see many people talking about. Okay, but it's big. And the reason that is big is, the reason that it's big for the Bitcoin market is this chart here in particular. So this is a fascinating little chart posted by Fred Krueger. Stay tuned. We will be releasing an interview with Fred Krueger this week. And If you know Fred, you already know, but it's a firecracker. He's a very interesting chap. So you can kind of see what you're showing here, and what Fred is alluding to is that we've kind of seen 3 phases for these Bitcoin spot ETFs. The first couple of weeks were good. They broke records, but they weren't wild, okay? And they weren't really very, very big until that second month of these Bitcoin spot ETFs. So you guys can hopefully see it pretty clearly. We have these 3 distinct phases on the chart. Now, you could see this is in black, the price of Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin is also in green on the chart below. But these big yellow bars are the size of the Bitcoin spot ETF inflows. Now, what section? Section 1, 2, or 3? What has the biggest yellow bars? I know the chart's a little bit small, but you can see quite clearly it is in phase 2, or it is between February and, the second or the third week of March. So for 6 weeks, we saw massive inflows into the spot ETFs. And it is no coincidence that we saw massive price pumps into the Bitcoin spot ETFs. So it's interesting that the inflows have still been positive over the past month. They've still been good, but they haven't been massive. And over the past month, Bitcoin has actually been correcting a little bit. And it's very interesting that as these US Bitcoin spot ETFs appear to be slowing down for the past 4 weeks, again, they could pick up again. Now we have a way for Southeast Asian capital to get into the Bitcoin spot ETF market. So this is massive. The timing of this spot ETF is very, very interesting. And, if it performs in a similar way that the US ETFs performs, I don't think anyone is bullish on what could happen. Again, nobody knows where the price of Bitcoin's going. We have no idea, okay? We showed you a fun, cute historical example showing what happened in 2019 when Bitcoin rallied by 40% after Xi Jinping said something positive about Bitcoin. We are going to cover that later on in today's video. But again, nobody knows what's going to happen because, as we can see from this website, China has quite the history of banning Bitcoin. We can see this website has actually found that there's been 18 different bans in 13 years. Okay, again, that sounds like a lot more than I originally thought, but you can see, in fact, China has burned crypto 18 times in the last 13 years, showing just how serious the Chinese government is about fighting cryptocurrencies. And this is obviously because they have such strict capital controls. Okay, and you can see this website lists a few of the bans. You can see 6 months after the launch of Bitcoin, China's Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Commerce banned the use of virtual currencies. This is in June 2009, when most countries weren't paying any attention to Bitcoin. Okay. Again, September 13, China's first direct cryptocurrency ban was on December 5th, 2013, when Chinese authorities, including the PBOC and other financial watchdogs, issued a joint statement prohibiting banks from handling Bitcoin transactions. So this website's pretty cool. It shows you many different examples of when China has banned Bitcoin, but they've once again made a Bitcoin backflip, which is, again, very interesting, and again, could mean some interesting things for the flows for these Bitcoin spot ETFs. Okay, so we're going to have a look at another chart in a moment, looking at the spot ETF flows, because a lot of people recently have talked about the reason that we've seen a lot of volume coming out of Asia recently in the spot market, which has been fascinating. We're going to get to that chart in a moment. I want to first have a look at the live chat. It looks like 54 people in here, so everybody's wanting to know what's happening in China. Rob has put it nicely. Evergrande blew up in China. That was obviously their first largest property developer. Ghost cities are abundant. I believe there's actually 65 million empty homes in China. So that is what a ghost city is. And the people of China need a store of value. I think Rob has absolutely hit the nail on the head there. The people of China need a store of value. Apparently, YouTube hasn't given Austin a notification for our live stream. Again, You can try to subscribe to our channel. Sometimes YouTube will give you a notification for when we're live. It's all a little bit of luck and a little bit of lottery in the YouTube system. At least you're here, Austin. Good to see you in the chat. Good to see Leatha in the chat as well. Sergio's in the chat. Hope you guys had a great weekend. It is Monday and we're back into the swing of things. And something else that is back into action is Bitcoin spot buyers. Okay, so again, there's a lot going on this chart. There's a lot of indicators, there's a lot of lines, there's a lot happening. But all you need to know is that by that big yellow box on the right-hand side of the chart, that is indicating that the spot markets in Bitcoin are very healthy. And you can see historically, again, these are models. Nobody knows where the price of Bitcoin is going to go. But historically, over the past 6 months, every time we've reached these levels on these spot indicators, price has pumped for Bitcoin. And this has been like a good indicator that we've seen a nice reset and there's still buying happening in the Bitcoin spot market. So Cole Garner has said the Bitcoin spot order book depth is looking good at historically bullish levels. Okay. Now, something else that's interesting with this Chinese backflip about Bitcoin is the wider signal it sends to the region of Southeast Asia. So we've been beating this story to death here on the channel because we think it's massive. The Kingdom of Bhutan has been quietly mining Bitcoin for years in Southeast Asia. And again, you know, geographically, they are very close to China. And I think it's interesting that, you know, this tiny nation in the Himalayas mined Bitcoin and didn't stop mining Bitcoin, even though the mainland China banned Bitcoin mining, okay, in 2021. Because we also know that when China banned Bitcoin mining in 2021, 60% of the global hash rate dropped offline pretty much overnight. But then 3 months later, in September 2021, 20% of the global Bitcoin hash rate mysteriously popped up back online in China, despite Bitcoin being banned in the country. So some people have speculated maybe this is the Chinese government mining Bitcoin. And similar people have also speculated, hey, would it make sense for China to get some of its allies in the region of Southeast Asia to also aggressively mine Bitcoin, as we're kind of seeing this, you know, multipolar world accelerate. Okay, China is one of the world's largest holders of US Treasury bonds, and they've been aggressively dumping bonds. We're kind of entering a little bit of a Cold War between America and China. This has really been exacerbated or seen very big, so to say, when the US passed the CHIPS Act law. And you know, we're seeing many geopolitical signposts that China and the US are not as friendly as they have been in prior years. So some people have speculated, you know, would it make sense for China to tap its allies on the shoulder and say, hey, let's mine some Bitcoin, okay? So we know that the country of Laos has been mining Bitcoin since 2021. The Kingdom of Bhutan has admittedly been mining Bitcoin since 2019. And if you track the dates, they may have even been mining Bitcoin since 2017. So I think now the fact that Hong Kong has capitulated and they've publicly announced their intentions to approve a Bitcoin spot ETF 2 months after the US Bitcoin spot ETF is massive, okay? The halving is coming 4 days away. The Bitcoin halving is literally 4 days away, which is, again, huge, okay? The new incoming amount of supply sold onto the market by the miners is about to be cut in half, okay? This is massive. Historically, it's always been bullish, which is absolutely massive, and it's a great thing for the chat. It's a great thing for the Bitcoin market, I should say. Okay, so the halving is coming. I love the countdown clock. We might show the countdown clock every week. Dude, Austin, $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Austin. Really, really appreciate that, my friend. That helps the channel a lot. Again, you're never going to see any crypto-based scammery products or sponsors here on the channel. We're going to really try to push the Bitcoin only signal. So support from you guys helps us massively. So thank you, Austin. Really, really appreciate that. Keep up the good work. We will keep up the Bitcoin only signal. Dan M, hello all. I'm relatively new user to YouTube, but I'm getting all of Luke's notifications. That's great, Dan. Again, everyone else subscribe and hopefully you're as lucky as Dan and you get all of the notifications. Santiago, great comment. 4 days left until the halving. Again, the halving is coming. historically has been very bullish for Bitcoin. So strap in, guys. More and more countries are FOMOing into Bitcoin. They're approving ETFs. Again, take custody of your own Bitcoin. An ETF is not real Bitcoin. And with all that said, I'm going to end that live stream here. Thank you to everyone who joined, and we'll see you tomorrow with another video.